Hi friends, if you've ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad or The Richest Man in Babylon, then you'll be familiar with the phrase, paying yourself first. Basically, what this means is setting money aside for your future self in the form of savings or investments before you service debt and expenses. This is my favorite part of the budgeting process. Dave Ramsey is notorious for saying that if you don't tell your money where to go, you'll wonder where it went. My vision for this channel is to build a community of friends who are responsible with their money and their lives. As a social science student, I'm well aware of the structural influences on our lives: the government, the economy, the education system. However, I'm also aware that there's little we can do. These are things we simply have little control over. How about focusing on things we can control, like budgeting? Disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing that I say in this channel constitutes as financial advice. I am simply a friend having a conversation about personal finances for educational purposes. What is a budget? Now, on this channel, we like to keep things simple. A budget is a way of telling money that you have where to go. Damn! One more time for emphasis. It is a way of telling money that you have where it needs to go. The reason I define it in this way is because a sustainable budget is a budget where your expenses are always lower than your income. There are 3 benefits to budgeting that I'd like to highlight. Benefit number 1, you know where your money is going. Benefit number 2, you are able to save towards financial goals. And benefit number 3, you have reduced financial anxiety. Now, depending on what source you consult and how detailed your analysis is, South Africans are said to spend 65 to 73% of their salaries servicing debt. This is concerning because if you are in this situation, then it means the following. 1, you likely are not able to save. 2, you likely don't have an emergency fund. And 3, you cannot adequately save for the future. It is therefore important for all of us to fight to stay within our means. I have created a video on the best place to save an emergency fund, and I'll link it up above. For the rest of the video, I'll take you through how I do my budget. But before we do that, I quickly want to do an illustration just to show why it's important to pay yourself first over and above expenses and debt. This is an illustration based off a video where a university professor basically did this illustration with his students. So he took an empty jar, right? So imagine this represents your life more broadly or your financial life more particularly. Okay. Now if I take this jar and I start putting in strawberries, okay? Strawberry number 2, strawberry number 3. Can I imagine that the strawberries represent paying yourself first? Okay, so this is, in my opinion, the most important part of the budgeting process. Ensuring that you have enough savings towards your emergency fund, enough savings towards retirement, and enough savings towards your children's education, just enough savings for yourself, your future self. Okay, so those are the strawberries. Now, The question becomes, is the jar full? Is that all you can do with your finances in your life? And although you may be tempted to say yes, however, if I pour the rice into this jar, notice how it falls into the empty spaces. Okay, I'm going to give it a bit of a shake. Okay, now the rice represents your expenses, debt that you have to service. In other words, if you begin by paying yourself first, there will still, obviously, consciously so, a reasonable amount it's not reasonable to pay yourself 90% of your salary. A reasonable amount that you pay to yourself, if you begin with that first, there will still be room for you to service your debts and for you to service your necessary expenses. Now the question then becomes, is the jar full? And the answer, although it's tempting to say yes, but the answer is no, right? Because if I take a glass of water and pour it in there, the water represents variable expenses, discretionary expenses. You want but don't absolutely need. So the principle behind the jar illustration is to highlight the importance of priorities. Now, if I had started by putting the rice in first and the water, I would not have been able to fit in the strawberries. The principle there is, if you begin with your expenses and your debt, then the likelihood of you paying yourself at the end of that process is very small. And this is why we flip things in reverse and we start by paying ourselves first. That could be 10 rands, it could be 20 rands, it could be 50, 100, 1,000. Whatever it is that is within your affordability, you start with that first. It's not the amount that is important, but rather the consistency. So if you decide that I'm paying myself 50 rands every month, then you put that in your expense column. Pay myself first. You take that immediately and you put it towards whatever savings instrument works best for you. Okay, so I hope that as we proceed with this video, that you keep that in mind, just the importance of paying yourself first in the budgeting process. This is an outline of my budget from the month of February to March 2024. Now, just two things to note before I take you guys through my budget. Number one, I have consciously chosen to exclude amounts. Hey guys, at no point in this channel will I reveal the details of my finances. And number two, ideally, there should be a separation in my expenses. There should be a fixed expense section and a variable expense section. So fixed expenses are those expenses that stay the same from month to month. Rent, car payments, low debt payments, those sort of expenses. Variable expenses are expenses that change from month to month. So those include food, petrol, that sort of thing. In the spirit of full transparency, I didn't want to change things before taking you guys through my budget. However, that is something that I want to tweak in my own budget going forward. Okay, let's start with the income section. Okay, so with my income, I had a flight reimbursement. As I'd said in the first video, I am an English teacher in China. Recently, I was home for the school holiday, and the flight going there and coming back was paid for by myself, and my school offers a reimbursement for that. So that is extra income that I expected in the month of March. The second is my base salary. Base because there is the option of occasionally doing extra classes. However, I like to account for just my base salary. So I just write that in that section. And over here would be the total, obviously. In terms of my expenses, the first is gym membership. My gym membership is expiring this year, so I am planning to, I want to factor that into my budget this month or in the following month. So I just have the category noted down. The next category is surprise dates with Bay. The love of my life is also teaching English in China. So I do, although we are often very tired from school, so surprise dates don't normally happen. However, it is nice to have a budget if we do want to order a meal or occasionally go eat out. Then there's an entertainment budget. That's if we choose to go out with friends and do activities. There's a Netflix budget, although I have recently discontinued my Netflix subscription. A health emergency fund. Now, as an ESL teacher in China, I do have the benefit of health medical insurance. However, it is not as comprehensive as I would like it to be. So I do try to have a health emergency fund. Then we have a category for home. So this is for situations where I need to make a contribution back home, whether that's for a birthday, whether that's for an emergency that arises, or whatever situation that would happen in my family of origin that requires me to make a financial contribution. So I try to budget for that. The next is PPS. So PPS is my insurance provider. So this is for risk cover. Scorpion Legal. I do have legal insurance that I pay for on a monthly basis. Savings, cosmetics, dental, Chinese classes. At some point, I did have the desire to do Chinese classes. However, time constraints and just internal resources. Go busy, guys. You. Apple storage, clothes, gifts, water, groceries, gas, phone and Wi-Fi bill, electricity, school lunch, investment club. So with this one, investment club, I do have a commitment with a group of friends that we invest a particular amount each month. The next is a clothing account. And for the month of March, I did have a rent expense. So the way things work in China is that you pay for rent 6 months in advance. So for the past couple of months, I have been saving up for this rent expense, and it was due in March for April. So yeah, those are my expenses. I then total them at the bottom. So even though I do have a savings category over here, I normally don't enter that. And I just add up all my expenses. I write them over there. And so these expenses are excluding savings. And what I'll then do is I'll take my total income, I'll subtract my total expenses, and what then remains would be my free money, aka my savings. And from those savings, I would then decide how much of that I send back home for savings, investments, family contribution, birthdays, etc. And how much I keep in China for my own upkeep. So yeah, that's a rough sort of run through of my budget. Hopefully this offers a bit of insight. What I will do now is share a more detailed budget that I think would be helpful for individuals who would like to be a little more thorough in their budgeting process. It's one that I downloaded from the Sanlam website, and I am in no way sponsored, promoting, or affiliated with Sanlam. It's just a really good budgeting template that I felt would be useful for you guys. So hopefully you enjoy it. I normally do my budget using the Notes app because it's synchronized together with my laptop. So whatever change I make on my phone is reflected on my laptop. and whatever change I make on my laptop is reflected on my phone. And what that means is that I can do my budget on the go. It normally takes me about 10 to 15 minutes to do each month. So I just like the convenience of doing it in that way. However, if you are able to make or set time aside each month to sit down, open an Excel spreadsheet, this is actually a great resource because it's divided into all your important categories. You've got your annual income up here. You've got your annual expenses. So these are your fixed expenses. They have them in two sections, both your monthly and your annual expenses. So for example, let's say your monthly expense on your home loan is 7,000. Then it would give you the annual amount automatically without you having to pull out a calculator and calculating that. So I do think this is a great resource. It's got your fixed expenses, variable expenses, and discretionary expenses. And so you can add all of those up and you get a very clear picture of your finances, from your fixed expenses to your variable expenses to your discretionary expenses and your total annual expenses versus your income. So it's a great resource. I'll link it in the description below. Hopefully it's useful for you guys. Final thoughts. In the words of Nelson Mandela, it always seems impossible until it is done. With those words, I'd like to invite you guys to give it a try. Just try setting up an easy budget that is convenient for you. It just needs to be a guide. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. If you found value in this video, please do me a favor. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Please share this video with a friend. Oh, also, like button, hit the like button. Now, not late, now. Do it now. Bye guys.